Welcome to P.A.R Media and Education's Public Legal Education webinar series. My name is Nadine Callahoo Hansen. P.A.R Media and Education is a department of Native Counselling Services of Alberta, and our primary goals are to make public legal education understandable, accessible, and affordable for Indigenous people. We at P.A.R are not lawyers, although we do endeavor to make sure that this information is correct and current to the best of our abilities and is edited by lawyers. Of course, laws change with elections and societal values, so this information is designed to be general in nature and may not apply to your specific situation. It may still be necessary to consult a lawyer for legal advice to assist you. For more information, you can always go to our website at bearpawlegalresources.ca or follow us on social media at Bearpaw Legal. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land in which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and Nakota Sioux. Today's topic is going to be about finding your birth families, your biological families. I'd also like to mention that on the bottom of every PowerPoint slide is our website address, bearpawlegalresources.ca. We've created a really handy dandy booklet on how to find your biological family in Alberta, right there. And so all of the information that we're going to be talking about for the next hour is listed in our booklet, as well as the contact information with addresses, phone numbers, that kind of stuff. Okay. So the first thing that people often ask is, where do I start this process? Who's responsible? Who do I contact if I want to look at the adoption process? Adoption is under the provincial jurisdiction and the responsibility of the province, so Alberta. If the adoption happened outside of Alberta, you would need to check the provincial website for adoptions in that respective province. Familiarize yourself with the process you find in the particular province. The Child, Youth and Family Enhancement Act and the particular act adoption regulations is the Alberta legislation that applies to adoption. In 2004, under the Child, Youth and Family Enhancement Act, access to adoption records became available in Alberta. This means that adoptees who are 18 years or older, birth parents, and a descendant of a deceased adopted person may be able to get identifying information about one another, such as names, ages, birth dates, and places of birth. So before people start their search, they need to make some decisions about whether or not they even want to search for their birth parents, birth families. It's a huge decision with huge emotional effects or consequences. So deciding to search for your biological family is not easy for many adopted adults and their birth parents. What if they don't want to know me? Adoptees often wonder. What if I don't like what I find? Birth parents ask themselves, what if he or she doesn't know they're adopted? Or do I even have the right to interfere in their life? In an adoption search, we are seeking answers about ourselves, our heritage, or our children. None of this is to be entered into lightly. What we will find will change our lives forever. Most people find the answers will bring them a sense of peace. And learning who you are is such a critical piece in becoming adults or becoming aware of who we are. And it's not just about it doesn't just relate about people that have gone through adoptions, but also people that weren't raised with both of their parents and start searching for the other parent. I remember when I was younger, being told that my dad was my stepdad. Not that it mattered at that point, my dad is my dad. But in an instant, it felt like half of my identity was ripped out from underneath me. And I no longer knew who I was. And so that's a big question that people who um, didn't get raised by both parents or were adopted have to ask themselves and really do an internal search about is really, do I want to find out who I am? There's this big piece of identity that is missing, this gap in who we are. So before embarking on an adoption search or a search for a parent, it's suggested that you educate yourself about the process and the emotions that you may encounter and recruit supports. Let somebody that you know and trust know that you are about to start this search and that you are going to really need emotional support as you are going through this process, because you don't know what you're going to find at the end of this search. Read books from the recommended reading list at the end of my workshop. Join a support group for adopted adults and original parents. No one else really understands what it's like to be missing vital information about yourself or to have even surrendered a child to adoption. There are several local in-person support groups located all across the country. There are also some really great online support groups whose members can provide invaluable advice and support. Birth parents can request identifying information of an adopted person 6 months after they turn 18 years old. Information about adoptive parents remains confidential. However, if a disclosure veto, which is a document that keeps birth registration and identifying information of a person confidential, has been filed by either party, adoptees or birth parents will only get non-identifying information such as province of birth, marital status, or occupation. So then you've made the decision, you want to embark on this search. Who do you contact? The Post-Adoption Registry is a department of Alberta Human Services that helps people get adoption information and, if possible, reunite with their biological family members. The registry has 3 social workers on staff to help people search for this information. You can contact them in Edmonton, in Sterling Place on 106th Street and 99th Ave. The phone number, and you can also contact them through Service Alberta if you're not in Edmonton, 310-0000, and ask to transfer to that 427-6387 number, and it's full free. You can also access them through their website, and you can also get copies of the forms on their website as well. And all of this information is in the How to Find Your Biological Family in Alberta booklet, which you can access instantly on our website, bearpawlegalresources.ca, for free. Love anything for free. So you go to our website and you can Google search the booklet, and it will bring you directly to it, and you can print a copy off right away. As well, you can contact us if you would prefer a hard copy. So you're going to make a request for something called a post-adoption registry. And all requests to the post-adoption registry must be done in writing and be accompanied by a photocopy of 2 pieces of identification. One must be a picture ID. So examples of acceptable identification include a driver's license, a birth certificate, a healthcare card, passport, or treaty card. If you're accessing forms on the post-adoption registry website, be aware they work best with Internet Explorer 8.0 plus. If you can't access the forms electronically, please phone the post-adoption registry and staff will send you the forms. Services provided by the post-adoption registry. It's not just about search, they can help you provide other stuff as well. An adult adoptee or the adoptive parent or guardian can contact the post-adoption registry to get a copy of the adoption order on behalf of a minor. And so you would just need to send a written request to get a copy of that order. Alberta allows, the Alberta law allows for the post-adoption registry to apply for consent from the birth parents to contact the adopted person and adoptive family to notify them of a medical concern. Even if there has been a veto, disclosure veto signed, if there is medical concerns, the post-adoption registry can act as a bridge between the adopted person and their bio parents to make sure that everyone has been notified of any medical concerns. They can also provide information containing non-identifying information of the adopted person and the adoptive family that was gathered at the time of adoption. So again, if there is a disclosure veto, they are still, the post-adoption registry are still able to provide non-identifying information. We'll get into what all is involved with non-identifying information. If an adopted person has entitlement to treaty status, the post-adoption registry can help you find out if they have First Nation or Métis status or are entitled to that status. An adoption order identifies the child to be adopted, the parents who are adopting the child, and the official date of the adoption. You need to maintain or hang on to a copy of that order because it may be required for legal purposes. You just never know when you're going to be asked for it. Adult adoptees or adoptive parents or guardians, on behalf of the adoptive minor, can submit a written request to obtain a copy of that adoption order from the post-adoption registry in the province where that adoption occurred. Again, adoptions are processed and maintained by the province, and so you may have to go online or make calls to children's services from a different province. Prior to January 1st, 2005, there were some different rules. So, of course, on November 1st, 2004, that was when the Child, Youth, and Family Enhancement Act came into effect. And at that time, the Alberta government opened access. So prior to January 1st, 2005, there was no such thing as an open adoption for records. And so this was a really big deal. I actually remember when this happened because there were a lot of people, both birth parents and adoptees, that didn't want their information to be shared. And so they were all notified of this change in law and were given an opportunity to complete something called a disclosure veto form. So what this new law did was the change affected all adoptions granted in the province prior to January 1st, 2005, which were all closed before. So birth parents and adoptees who were 18 years or older could then obtain identifying information from about one another unless a disclosure veto was signed and put in place. So the disclosure veto form, it's for individuals who want their identifying information to remain confidential. And so they had to fill out, complete, and file a disclosure veto with the Alberta's post-adoption registry. This veto would prevent the release of any birth registration or adoption information identifying that person. So there was still that ability to remain confidential. And then under the new law, people could complete a request for release of adoption information form, which would be submitted to the post-adoption registry. And as long as there wasn't the disclosure veto form, again, the post-adoption registry would act as a bridge between the adopted child or adult, as the case may be, and the birth parents, and could facilitate that reconnection. Birth parents can request identifying information of an adopted person 6 months after they turn 18. Information about adoptive parents remains confidential. However, if a disclosure veto, which we talked about, the document that keeps birth registration and identifying information confidential, has been filed by either party, adoptees or birth parents will only get non-identifying information such as the province of birth, their marital status, or occupation. Sorry, itchy nose. Birth parents and adoptees can no longer file a disclosure veto. Instead, what they can complete is a contact preference form. Adoptions prior to 2005 would have completed a disclosure veto. Any adoptions after 2005 would complete a contact preference form. And the request for release of adoption information form is still required to request biological family information. So the request for release of adoption information form remains the same no matter whether your adoption occurred prior to 2005 or after. However, whether you are completing a disclosure veto or a contact preference form would depend on when the adoption occurred. In Alberta, there are 3 processes available to search for and potentially reunite you with your biological family members. If an adult adoptee is deceased and contact is being requested, the post-adoption registry needs a document indicating this, so a death certificate. First Nation band members or members of a Métis settlement can also register as interested parties. However, they must have written consent from both birth parents, or they must confirm that both are incapable of consent. Once 2 or more people have registered, A match can happen in the system, and a reunion can be arranged by a reunion consultant from the post-adoption registry. The registry will help a reunion happen by sharing basic information with each party, and registry staff will help each party decide what type of contact they'd like to have at the beginning. This type of contact is voluntary, so they don't have to meet the other party or parties until they're ready. If you decide it's best for you not to be registered, you can write a letter asking the post-adoption registry to remove yourself from the registry. The average processing time for the application for voluntary contact is 4 to 6 months. So that's the first step to process the search process. If identifying information cannot be released, you can still get non-identifying information of the person with the veto, your own information and that of other parties in the adoption record, as long as there is no veto. At this point, if some identifying information cannot be released, some people will do their own search for the information they need. There are private search companies that can help you, but those can be extremely costly. The processing time from getting a match to reunion is about 8 weeks. So not terribly lengthy process, as long as the adoptions took place through children's services. Of course, it becomes a lot more problematic when during the 60s scoop, children were apprehended at a staggering rate, and adoptions occurred not just within the province, and in fact, not even always within Canada, but were also adopted outside of the country. And so the search process might sound really simple and short, but for particularly some Indigenous people, the search process is extremely complicated. Once the applications have been submitted, an exchange of information can begin. Each piece of correspondence is sent to the post-adoption registry, where it's reviewed to see if it contains identifying information. If it doesn't, it's forwarded to the other party that it's addressed to. All correspondence is sent by express post, so unclaimed correspondence is sent directly back to the post-adoption registry. This is why it's important to keep the registry updated with any changes to your address or other contact information. So the post-adoption registry will contact the first party if to ask if they want to stop sending correspondence to the office. The exchange of information can begin again once the second party contacts the registry. And through the exchange of information, you can exchange cards, letters, but you cannot exchange gifts, actual gifts. So, so at this point, you have somebody has registered with the post-adoption registry, and they've let them know what level of contact they're interested in, whether it's actual releasing, identifying information with the hopes of a potential reunification, or it is just, I want to keep my identifying information confidential at this point, and if the other party joins, registers on the post-adoption registry, then the post-adoption registry can act as the go-between in processing or getting, it's like passing notes at school, right? but passing notes or cards or letters between parties. And they will always make sure that the information, the letters and cards that are being uh, transitioned between parties doesn't actually disclose any identifying information, such as education level, marital status, that kind of stuff. Okay. So the ongoing information exchange, and that's what that process is called, the passing of notes or the ongoing information exchange. Once the application's been submitted, an exchange of information can begin. Each piece of correspondence is sent directly to the post-adoption registry, where it's reviewed to see if it contains identifying information. If it doesn't, it's then forwarded to the other party that it's addressed to. All correspondence, like I had mentioned, is sent by express post to make sure that nothing gets lost in transition. The ongoing information exchange will stop assisting if information cannot be forwarded for 3 consecutive years. And so if they're sending stuff and it keeps coming back after 3 years, they will actually close the file and stop facilitating that. Often reunion brings with it unexpected emotions. Adoptees grieve the family and identity they lost. Parents who surrendered a child to adoption often revisit the feelings of loss they experienced at the time of the adoption. All of this can be very scary and emotional. Local support groups are filled with people who have experienced adoption reunion and are happy to help you work through what you're feeling. They can also direct you to an adoption competent therapist in your area. Reading books about adoption reunion and the effects of adoption on adoptees and their parents by birth may also be helpful. And I've provided a fairly extensive list of resources coming towards the end. So as you're going through this process, I can't stress enough that it's so important to surround yourselves with supports, because you never know what and when you may be triggered. So what next? Some reunited adoptees and original parents create a new family while still respecting the adoptee's existing adoptive family. Others prefer to visit occasionally and maintain a friend-based relationship. Still, others meet and then decide they have the answers they're seeking. No one situation fits every relationship. The vast majority of adoptees and their parents by birth report that whatever the outcome might be, they're very glad they searched and found the answers to their questions. So some community resources, and these are in Edmonton that you might be able to access. And I am going to forward a copy of my PowerPoint so that you do have these on at your fingertips that you can access. Adoption by choice, adoption options, Catholic Social Services will also assist. There's also the Christian Adoption Services, Ensminger Consulting, the Métis Child and Family Services, there's Parent Finders, Shannon's Research Services, and Small Miracles Adoptions. And I've provided the phone and physical address for some of them, and web address information for all of them. In Calgary, they also have a fair list: adoption by choice, adoption options, Christian Adoption Services, Caria, Colleen Clark assists as well, Inner Truth Counseling Services, and Rise Counseling and Consulting all specialize in families that have been affected by adoption. And then, of course, we have others outside of those two major cities. Red Deer, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat all have agencies that specialize in adoption. Then there's Provincial, Forever Adoption, Community and Education Services, so FACES. Adoption Society of Alberta. There's also the Canadian Council of Natural Mothers, Adoption Council of Canada, Forget Me Not Family Society, Lifespan Counseling, Consulting and Mediation, and Pro Trace Services as well. If you're looking for specific services to assist with the unique circumstances of Indigenous people, in Edmonton, there's the Creating Hope Society that also provides supports for Indigenous people that are searching and trying to reconnect with their biological families as well as their birth communities. I've also provided a fairly extensive list of recommended reading that you can access. I've got the titles and the authors, and so lots of resources to assist both the biological parents, the adoptive child, and the adoptive parents. So we also have access to the post-guardianship services, particularly with Indigenous children that may not have necessarily received consent from the band to be adopted. They may have been placed for guardianship, private guardianship. And so there is also the Post Guardianship Services Unit, which receives requests from individuals, people who were never adopted and who, as adults, are requesting information from their child intervention files regarding their family background, their developmental history, school history, and medical history. If the individual making the request has received child intervention services within the last 2 years, the request should be made to the most recent district office who provided the services. If a request is made regarding an active child intervention file, the request should be made to the current case manager if known. If you have any questions about post-guardianship services or would like to obtain an application form, contact the Post-Adoption Registry at 780-427-6387. And again, I've also provided the direct web link to contact the post-guardianship services. And just some interesting information that is not directly connected, but interesting nonetheless. Some stars or celebrities that were adopted. I don't know if you were aware of this, but Nelson Mandela was adopted. After his father died when Mandela was 9 years old, his life changed drastically. He was adopted by Chief, oh goodness gracious, Jong Intaba Dalindaibo. I probably didn't say that right. Who was the acting regent of the Thembu people. Mandela moved from the tiny village of Kunu, where his family had subsisted off beans and maize, corn, to the royal residence of Thembuland. Here, the eventual president of South Africa and winner of the Nobel Peace Prize studied English, geography, and took a keen interest in African history, eventually going on to study law and become involved with political and human rights. So imagine what the world would have been like if Nelson Mandela's dad had never died and he had not been adopted. Sad, very sad circumstances, but certainly the world benefited greatly because of the adoption. Tim McGraw, my two favorite married celebrities, Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, married. were both adopted. McGraw was adopted, but his story has a celebrity twist. As the country star told Oprah in 2014, he grew up believing his mother's husband was his dad until he found a shoebox containing his birth certificate. The certificate revealed the 11-year-old's dad was actually a professional baseball player named Tug McGraw, who played for the Philadelphia Phillies. Despite traveling to a baseball game to see him, it wasn't until McGraw was 18 that he had any real contact with the well-known athlete. Faith Hill was knew that she was adopted from a young age, but as a child in small town Mississippi, didn't have the interest to track down her birth parents. It wasn't until the singer moved to Nashville on the path to stardom that she decided to begin her search, finding not only her parents, but also a biological brother. Meeting her birth mother was a profound experience for Hill, leaving her not with anger, but with respect. So she told Good Housekeeping. She quoted saying, "I know she must have had a lot of love for me to want to give me what she felt was a better chance." Sarah McLaughlin was one of 3 adopted children in a strict Halifax, Nova Scotia home. So local Canadian girl, taken in by American academics. McLaughlin's reunion with her birth mother at 19 was coincidental in 1998. The woman had been searching for her throughout the small city, eventually finding her singer daughter throughout a mutual acquaintance. Ray Liotta, adopted at the age of 6 months. Decades later, Liotta hired an investigator to track down his mother. And he was quoted saying, "It made me realize she did the best that she could with me." And Debbie Harry, Blondie lead singer, tracked down her biological mother who did not want a relationship with her. She used to fantasize that her mother was Marilyn Monroe. Don't we all wish? All right. And so that is everything that you never thought you'd need to know about searching for your biological family, and some interesting tidbits of information that maybe you didn't want to know, but you got to hear anyway. If you are interested in or think that it would be beneficial to get copies of our book on how to find your biological family in Alberta, contact us through our website. You can order any and all of our resources, which are free of charge, through our website, bearpawlegalresources.ca, or you can access any of our resources and videos online through our website as well.